was accepted by the COA. And then quarterly reports were presented last October, February, May, and August. All the stipulations were fully addressed with the exception of the one outlined in this item. So staff continued to work with LVUSD, and it is recommended to change their status from accreditation with stipulations to accreditation. You've got the summary there in your item, but just to go over some of the highlights. So in order to establish productive working relationships with partners, LVUSD's advisory board now includes affiliated partners from participating districts and institutions of higher education, including educational leadership program faculty from UMass Global, CSU Dominguez Hills, and LA County Office of Education. 2 meetings have taken place this academic year, and quarterly meetings will continue this year and beyond. Some specific areas of focus include the past program fieldwork requirements and expectations, and ensuring that the expectations for the candidate and coach meetings are done consistently. In addition, the program leadership and the advisory board have reviewed recent completer survey data to identify additional areas of growth. And then the final thing you have linked there is an overall sustainability plan, which details the continuing actions to be taken at the institutional and program level. And that is addressing this stipulation and then the ones that were already removed from the last meeting. The assistant superintendent and program coordinator will oversee these initiatives and continue to coordinate collaboration with their affiliated partners through the advisory board meetings and additional outreach efforts and communication. And program leadership, we have both of them here today now. They are joining us virtually today should you have additional questions. And just as a reminder, this is going to be information only today, and then move forward at the January meeting as a consent item for action.
Thank you, Mr. Hattrick. We now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the report. Mr. Gleason or Ms. Luthien?
As I've shared in the past, gratitude and appreciation for continuing to push us to continue to grow, and to William and Michelle for the last many months of great support.
Ms. Luthien? Not required. I just want to make sure you don't want to add anything.
I just wanted to thank everyone for their support as we move forward with this program. I'm super proud of it and really excited to work and further our work together.
Thank you. At this time, are there any questions or comments from committee members? Well, I'll jump in then. I appreciated the addition of your sustainability plan and how it addressed just, you know, all the stipulations, but also just that ongoing commitment to continuous improvement. And like I do often at this stage, can you tell me, just as an institution, as an accrediting agency or a program delivery, I guess I should say, what are some of the biggest takeaways for you from this process? And, you know, considering where you are a year later, or a little more than a year later.
Such a great question. I think one is have a great handbook. So make sure that so I think, you know, everything we've known always, like intellectually from the initial provisional accreditation, that documentation was important. But I think that in this process, it really forced us to think about, on a granular level and a macro level, how to faithfully document our efforts that in the past seemed more hard for us to find data for. And specifically on that, I mean equity. And equity in terms of delivery directly to students, but also equity in access and representation on our faculty and institutional level. So that's really pushed us. Second, I'd say capacity. So Ms. Lauthian was not in her current role when we started this process. And I think what it really illuminated is the need for even broader staff and structure to our growing capacity or our growing number of students in our programs. And so we've seen a real maturation of our organizational structure and a continued revisitation and really reinvesting program fees back into the supports that make the candidate experience even stronger. And then third, I think it's really clarified for us how our research base has evolved since we initially wrote the program, and how it's evolved also as a product of the pandemic in terms of virtual delivery versus in person. And so really a lot of our systems needed to be refined and revisited and reevaluated. And that all came from this process. But I think in any process, the uncomfortable part is when we're pushed to and continued to push. You know, Michelle and William were always kind and supportive and available, and they also pushed us. And in some cases, I think pushed us outside of our comfort. I should say, in many cases, pushed us outside of our comfort zone, myself included. And it's in hindsight, you look back and say, well, a lot of great growth has come from that, and it was a worthwhile process. So I hope that answers your question.
It did very well. Thank you. And Ms. Louthien, I'm sorry I said your name wrong. So are there any other questions or comments from committee members? If this is an action item, do I have a motion?
No,
Oh, this is not an action item. I'm sorry. Just a reminder, this will be a consent item on the January agenda. And at this time, I just want to acknowledge that there's no concerns.
Great.
Okay, thank you. And we'll be back on the agenda in January then.
And our apologies to Las Virgenes for the error in the agenda. We'll make sure you're on the consent and go through in January.
Not a problem at all. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks again for everybody, Mr. Hadrick, Ms. Williams, George. Appreciate your work, and thanks to the school district team.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 19 is a report of accreditation team to Alder Graduate School. Consultant Jake Schuler will introduce this item. This was a provisional site visit. Joining him today is team lead Pia Wong and institutional representatives Heather Kirkpatrick, president, and Shana Sullivan, dean. Does anyone need to recuse? Okay, Mr. Schuler, will you please begin? Are we still waiting for? Oh, no, everyone.
Tim Weeks is also presenting on the item. He was also a consultant on this visit. I didn't check in with Michelle on that. I'm not sure I see Tim yet. Okay, great. I think Tim is starting, right, Tim?
Yes, Jake. Want me to begin?
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Great, thanks. Okay, good afternoon, committee members. The provisional site visit to the Alder Graduate School of Education took place on October 11th through 13th. The visit was conducted entirely by video via Zoom technology, and a total of 357 interviews were conducted with various individuals throughout the site during the visit. And despite being conducted entirely online, the site visit proceeded in accordance with all the normal accreditation protocols. As a reminder to the COA on the process for a provisional site visit, which takes place during stage 5 of the initial institutional approval process, we can think of stage 5 provisional site visit as a truncated version of years 5 and 6 of the 7-year accreditation cycle. Alder submitted their responses to preconditions, the program review, and common standards in the last year leading up to the provisional site visit. And those submissions were reviewed by the members of the provisional site visit team and coordinated by Jake and me. Alder responded to all feedback on those submissions and worked with us to prepare the provisional site visit over the last year. Alder is now in the final steps of the IIA process, and after today's vote, this report will go forward to the commission during its December meeting for full approval based on today's recommendation. If the commission approves the COA's decision from today, Alder will be considered a fully approved institution by the commission, and be assigned to an accreditation color cohort by the administrator of accreditation, and will be able to propose new programs if they desire to choose so. And I will now turn it over to Jake to finish the introduction of this item.
Thanks, Tim. So as Tim mentioned, we worked with the accreditation team at Alder over the past year to complete all submissions and to prepare for the site visit. The Alder accreditation team was led by Nate Monley, Senior Director of New Program Development and Accreditation, and Mariah Klein, Registrar and Credential Analyst Lead. Nate and Mariah were fantastic to work with and to get to know personally throughout the year leading up to the visit, and they were extremely thorough in their preparation for the visit. Alder President Heather Kirkpatrick, Dean Shana Sullivan, and Alex Kahn, Senior Director of Academic Programs, were also instrumental throughout the year and join us today by Zoom to answer any questions that the COA might have. Also joining by Zoom today is our team lead, Dr. Pia Wong. Pia was an absolute joy to work with and a fantastic leader throughout the process. We'd also like to thank our site visit team members for contributing their time and expertise to the visit. Those were Doctors Robin Duncan, Jim Mitchell, and Julie Holmes. I'll stop there and turn it over to Pia, who will present the findings and the accreditation recommendation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, friends. I wish I were down there in downtown, seeing that familiar dais, but happy to zoom in and hear some familiar voices. Marty Martinez, and very happy to be here with the Alder team. I'm sure that they have been anxiously anticipating this day, but hopefully not too anxiously since their visit went so well. The site visit team was sort of the dream team. I really have to compliment Jake and Tim for selecting a very hardworking, very focused group of people from peer institutions. I think that all credit goes to them, their careful read, their judicious read of the evidence, and then the sort of, I think, ways in which they engaged with all of the different partners to Alder Graduate School of Education, really with an interest in learning more and also triangulating the evidence that was provided in written format. So the team recommendation is accreditation. We found that all common standards were met, and we found that all program standards for the multiple and single subject programs and the education specialist program were met. I'd like to say a few things just to call the committee members' attention to some unique features of Alder. I think certainly these were topics of a lot of discussion and reflection among the site team members, and I think something for which Alder is in a position to sort of provide models for our field. So they're very successful in recruiting and supporting and retaining a diverse group of future teachers. Their diversity numbers match the student population in many of the districts that they work in, and they have some very deliberate strategies that result in those data. They have an unusual but positive model of really liaisoning between the districts that they're partnered with and their programs through this role of the partner director, who very explicitly lives in two worlds, the K-12 and school site world, and then also the Graduate School of Education world. And then we found that the curriculum is closely tracked. There's a lot of very intentional opportunities for communication across roles, and then for input from various stakeholders, so that they are really, they put themselves in a position to be responsive to all of the different constituencies that they are serving, most notably their residents. So we, those of us on the team really enjoyed learning about the program. We thought that there are some innovations that the program is implementing. We enjoyed and learned a lot from talking with all the different constituencies that they work with. And we had very little difficulty coming to our decision. So I just want to thank the Alder leadership team again for the many hours of work that we know that you put into organizing your evidence and to creating a smooth site visit for us. And hope that we had a few discussions about some areas of further reflection, particularly communicating across roles. These are typical issues and complex programs like the ones that we run for educator preparation. And we're confident that the Alder team, with all the different ways in which they reflect and engage data, that they will come up with some very, very robust ways to respond to some of the pointers that we offer them. So I think that is all I really would like to say about the report and about our visit.
Thank you very much, Pia. We now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you that this is not a time to dispute the team's report, but rather to provide any thoughts you had about the visit.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you to Tim and to Jake. All of the superlatives that you shared about our team, we shared about the two of you. We're very grateful. And Pia and the team who's not here, but Robin and James and Julie, everybody was just wonderful. The visit itself was everything it should be. It was full of gravitas and purpose and lots of kindness, which was deeply appreciated as well. And thank you also to this committee, the Committee on Accreditation. I know I looked at your agenda and you're doing an extraordinary service. So thank all of you too. The only thing I would say, besides lots of gratitude to everybody in the room and some of the people not in the room, is that the committee's reflections really did add to our understanding. It was remarkable to see who showed up and how they presented and what came up. And then also, of course, just like Pia said, helping us focus on tightening up even more of the comms across all of the myriad stakeholders feels like an important way we can continue to refine the work. And finally, we're just deeply, deeply honored to get to do the work that everybody in this room cares so much about. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the Alder team? Okay. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? I want to remind you that this report next goes to the full commission for the final determination on the last stage of the IIA process. Member Morrison.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I enjoyed reading the report, and particularly because I have no experience personally of a resident program like this, so I was fascinated to see how it works and teaching 4 days and then going for professional development and education classes on the 5th day. So it taught me a lot, and I appreciated the fullness of the report. I just had one question that kind of stuck out to me on page 7, where you have the number of program completers and graduates enrolled. There were 54 completers last year, but 149 candidates. Does that just represent an expansion of the program, or does it mean that a lot of people didn't make it?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So what we've been incredibly proud of for over 10 years is our high completion rates in year 1. Typically, we see 88% of our graduates complete on average over the past 10 years. And then at the end of last year, we were very surprised. I think we had a 56% completion rate. And this surprised us in looking back on it over the summer. As soon as we sort of saw what was happening, our analysis showed us several things. The biggest thing that prevented let me back up before I get into the analysis. Even though 56% completed last year, over 85% of them actually were hired. So they earned a master's, they completed their program with us, the coursework with us, they were hired, they were deemed terrific by the people who had watched them teach all year, but they did not complete because they couldn't earn their credential. The biggest single reason for not earning the credential was they didn't finish the RECA. every other year, up until last year, we've had no problem supporting our people to finish the RECA earn completion. What happened with the RECA is they didn't take it early. So if you remember back in 2022, January of this year, people were coming back in COVID, even though I think it feels a little bit thankfully distant from us now. COVID was back closing things down and creating chaos in systems. People were out of schools, people were subbing. It was sort of the madness. So January would have been the typical time because our students take their literacy class. It ends in December. We set them up to take the RECA in that January timeframe, and they didn't. Lots of them just didn't take the test, and then that delayed everything. And then the further they got from, of course, the class, the harder. So one of our big analyses was the RECA. Another thing that confounded this, typically we would have seen that in January and sort of set off all of the alarm bells. I hope this isn't too long of an answer, but it's an important question. It typically would have set off alarm bells and we would have been on it. We would have been finding things. But our understanding at the time was that it may be that the RECA was going to be waived the way it had been the year before because of COVID. So we were doing this sort of dance between, do we really put the pressure on the residents that like we typically would? Or do we recognize it may be waived? It's not clear if they're going to be held to this. And so the combination of those two things were probably the biggest explanation.
Thanks. That makes sense.
And I should
Any
add,
other-
sorry, I just do want to say we're sticking with those students and providing tons of support. And we expect to make sure that that class is back up into the 80-90% completion rate by the end of this year.
Thank you very much. Any other committee member questions? Member Balatayo?
Hello. I have a question regarding Common Standard 2. So what steps have you made to ensure that your program is identifying supporting candidates who also need additional support?
Oh gosh, I think we're very, very proud of the work we do here. We have typically remarkable completion rates. We have an incredible student services team, an incredible financial aid team. So some of the steps that we take, some of the work that we do includes setting our students up with writing from the very beginning during the summer, making sure people start to identify as writers at the graduate level. We're really proud of that work. Some of the work that we do includes providing tutors to our students. So we're a graduate school of education who accepts people who have not yet passed the CSET and CBEST. This is a little bit unusual. We do this very intentionally. And if you are going to do that, then there's sort of more onus if you want to have a high completion rate on providing tutors for people to get through those tests. So we provide tutors to our students throughout the year. We have emergency fund services. I think one of the biggest experiences we face in serving who we serve very purposely and proudly is finances are a real issue. So we have an emergency fund that I think is really, really helpful to a number of our students. I would say the way we're structured is probably another piece of the support, the director role that Pia spoke to initially. This is a person who essentially has a caseload of maybe about 20 of our students, and they see them every week for seminar all day long. They're in their classrooms, observing them several times a month. They're very, very close to this cohort of 20, and they really play the role of a coach and guide and advisor, and they're taking the best possible advisor. They're taking good care of them all year. I think a lot of individualized, nuanced attention. I think our grading for equity policy is another really beautiful way that we take care of our residents. If somebody is late or doesn't succeed on an assignment, they are asked to submit it again until they do succeed on it, and there's not a penalty. There's other aspects of that policy, but that's an example. I'm going to see if Alex or Nate thinks I left anything out. I feel very, very good about our support of our students. Nate, Alex, anything you think I missed?
I also noticed Pia has her hand up, so I don't
Oh,
know.
great. Pia knows something.
It's so funny. I'm completely not sure what the etiquette is here. So I did on Zoom, but I will say in response to, you're probably looking at the Common Standards chart and seeing that there was a notation of inconsistently for that last sub-element in Common Standard 2. And what we the evidence that we saw was that there was a process in place to support candidates who were not sort of on the regular trajectory to developing and demonstrating competence in the TPEs, but it wasn't as widely known or named across the different roles as we would have liked to have seen. So when we talked with the Alder leadership, we noted it, but we also noted that it may not be something that could be ameliorated in the space of 10 days, because that's the thing about consistent and inconsistently. So just to clarify, that particular assessment really was about the fact that there was a process, but probably a little bit more effort was needed to make sure that anybody who needed to use the process knew what it was, knew where to find it, knew what their particular role was in the process.
Thank you for adding that, Pia. Are there any other comments, questions? Member Forbes.
Well, I really enjoyed reading the report and of the visit, and am excited to follow your progress into the future. So we've discussed, this is another question that kind of goes beyond the findings into what we might learn from your experiences. So we've talked several times today about the importance of supporting mentors for pre-service teachers and the difficulty in doing that for all of us in terms of both, the necessary financial supports as well as time and so forth. So I was interested in the curriculum description for your education specialist program on page 14, where it talks about the summer activities. I think it's next to the last paragraph on that page. In June of each year, residents begin in-person graduate level summer intensive courses, as well as professional development activities with their partner LEA teachers. And then it goes on to say that mentors also begin training during the summer. So I was just curious in who is supporting, how is that being supported, that time and professional learning for the mentors? Is that something that Alder is supporting, or is it the districts, or how is that, how are the teachers being engaged in that activity, the mentors?
I'll open and then I'll let Alex jump in. It's Alder. Alder provides all of that support. We think it's a really important piece of the work we do. And what we do when we partner with a school system is we help them, we say, part of how we do this is we're going to take your mentors out of the classrooms where they have a resident all year. Their resident will be there when the mentor isn't, and we'll have one full day pretty much every month with them. It'll start in the summer. So it's a full day of PD, and the PD is ours. We develop it and have honed it a lot and continue to refine it. And it's PD that we hope helps them not only grow as educators and think about what's happening in the field and some of the coursework that their residents are taking, but I think one of the most important things we're doing in that space is coaching them to be good coaches, how to share a classroom, how to give good feedback, how to give hard feedback. Alex oversees a lot of this, and I'd love her to add on.
Yes, that's a great question. I think there are two unique pieces about the summer and the professional learning that mentors get to participate in, and to build on what Heather is sharing. I think there's two events. The first is helping the mentors learn and explore their new role and what it means to be a mentor, to really understand the model of Alder and a co-teaching and gradual release, and what does that mean for just their work in welcoming the teacher resident, and doing their own reflection about both their practice and thinking ahead of what kind of conditions can they create in the beginning of the year to support the onboarding, and really creating a community of learning for the mentors so they can learn from and with other mentors who are working in that. cohort or partnership. And I think it really helps to tailor and contextualize some of the learning and experience for the mentors. And the second opportunity, I think that's really great, is to position the mentors and residents as co-learners. Mentors and residents meet together to do a mentor-resident orientation day. So all mentor-resident pairs also meet to review the year, to get ready for the beginning of the year, to understand key experience and activities as they prepare for welcoming students. And so I think those two pieces help really support and set up the mentors for their own learning as they continue on to launch the school year with their resident.
Well, thank you. That's really interesting. And I especially was interested in it for the education specialists, given that the transition to the new standards is going to be new for the mentors as well. The coaching role, as you say, is super important, but some of them may also not. They may certainly have the expertise that's in the new standards, but they may not know yet about those new standards compared to their own preparation, right? And TPEs. But I guess I'm just still curious about how the release days happen, because that really seems important. Is that something that Alder provides the support for, or is it the districts are making a contribution, or how does that work for you all?
The residents get a sub permit during the summer. And so they are able to run the class during the time that the mentor is with us.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, this is an action item. Do I have a motion? Member Bolatayo?
Sorry, I've lost my place. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I move that we approve the recommendation of accreditation for Alder Graduate School of Education.
Do I have a second? Member Forbes? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Okay, motion carries. Congratulations to the Alder team, and just thank you to Mr. Schuler, Mr. Weeks, to Ms. Wong, and congratulations again to the team. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 20. Item 20 is the refinements to the initial institutional approval process, which we just saw Alder complete. And so consultants Hart Boyd and Poonam Betty will introduce this information item. Mr. Boyd, will you begin, please?
Yes, thank you. This item presents an update on the changes to stages 2, 3, and 4 of the initial institutional approval process that the Commission adopted earlier this month. Staff noticed that when stage 2 and 3 items were going before the Commission, an institution's demonstration of need, which is initial program precondition number 1, this had been a topic of particular interest to commissioners. Thus, one of the changes that was proposed and subsequently adopted by the Commission was to move both initial program preconditions to stage 2. By moving initial program precondition 1 to stage 2, by the way, I apologize for all these numbers that you're going to be hearing. It's kind of confusing. By moving initial program precondition number 1 to stage 2, the institution is provided with an opportunity to demonstrate the need for their proposed programs and provide commissioners with context for that need earlier in the IIA process. Additionally, moving initial program precondition number 2, collaboration in program design and implementation, to stage 2, also allows the institution to build the foundation and the partnerships it will need to effectively operate educator preparation programs in California. Another change that was made to stage 2 was moving general precondition number 9, faculty and instructional personnel participation, from stage 3 to stage 2. General precondition number 9 is only applicable to institutions of higher education and is the precondition in which IHEs provide a list of their faculty members who have participated in the public school system within the past 3 years. When looking at the IIA process, it made sense to us to move this precondition to stage 2 since the eligibility requirements closely resemble the general preconditions. So, to summarize this first set of changes, the initial program preconditions and general precondition number 9 moved from stage 3 of the IIA process to stage 2. With that, I'll turn it over to Poonam to go over the next set of adopted changes.
All right, thanks, Hart. The second set of changes impacts the documentation the Committee on Accreditation will see when institutions that are seeking initial program approval come before you at the conclusion of stage 4 of the IIA process. So at the commission meeting earlier this month, staff proposed moving the program-specific preconditions, which institutions responded to in stage 3, to stage 4. This change will allow institutions to singularly focus on developing their proposed programs in alignment with program standards. The commission adopted this change in their motion, so moving forward, stage 4 documentation that will be provided to the COA as part of item 8 will contain responses to both the program standards and the program-specific preconditions, unless otherwise noted. This committee has extensive experience looking at both program-specific preconditions and program standards through other accreditation activities that this body oversees. Now, if we look at page 2 of the item, you will see that the table notes the previous requirements that institutions across stages 2 to 4 were required to submit. The third column on that table reflects the requirements that institutions in stages 2 to 4 would now respond to. And I'm going to use the same analogy that I used at the commission meeting. An overarching way to think about these changes is by imagining a funnel or an inverted triangle. The hope is that these changes will allow institutions that are in IIA to take a top-down approach from looking at stage 2, whether or not they are eligible to be a commission-approved program sponsor in stage 2, to focusing on the infrastructure of their education unit in stage 3, to then focusing on establishing their proposed program or programs and adherence to the standards in stage 4. In conclusion, we would like to point out that when you move into the next item, item 21, you will see that there is an agenda insert for chapter 3. That insert reflects the changes that were adopted by the commission about 2 weeks ago, including the changes that we just presented to you right now. So just want to make that note. This is an information item and we're available to answer any questions that committee members may have. Thank you.
Have any questions or comments from committee members?
I was just going to say that when it was presented to the commission, they were oops, sorry about that. They were pretty enthusiastic about the fact that staff continues to look at the process and refine the process so that it will work smoothly. And lots of kudos for Hart and Poonam in terms of making sure that the process is what it should be. So,
Member Forbes.
Oh my, I wasn't muted before. Well, I noticed today in reading some of the other reports how important it seemed that the common standards were in place before adding on a lot of programs. And so I really like the way that you've moved the common standards. Well, it's, you know, it's a highlighted in stage 3 now, which seems really important to me. So before they go too much further, we want to make sure the whole infrastructure is in place. And it did make me remember the streamlining and strengthening committees. And that was the discussion that we had at the time to for the reason for revising those common standards in the first place. So yeah, I like that.
Other comments? It does. I think when Cheryl mentioned streamlined, it does seem streamlined, and also like the flow is much smoother now. And so I just want to say thanks to both of you for your work on that, and for continuing to just make the process even stronger and more practical, maybe.
I should also acknowledge Michelle. She's part of the IIA team.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and then move on to item 21. Item 21 is a discussion and adoption of proposed revised accreditation handbook. And you'll probably recall that we've been getting pieces of it throughout the year. This item is being presented by Administrators Cheryl Hickey and Aaron Sullivan. Ms. Hickey, will you begin, please?
Yes, and we have Aaron, I see on the screen, so that's good. Nice to see you again, Aaron.
Hi.
So yes, so this item for some of our new members, we've been bringing the accreditation handbook, the current accreditation handbook, which was adopted by this committee in 2016. We've been bringing pieces of it since February of 2021 to take another look at it, update it, revise it, eliminate duplication, and just really try to make sure it reflects what the current policy and practices are of the Committee on Accreditation. Some of this language in this revised handbook may be turned into regulations. It's important for us to make sure that we have enforceable policies. Not all of it is applicable to a regulation. There's chapters in here, of course, on, the skills of a BIR member and those kinds of things. So those are not regulatory kinds of language, but some of this is. So for instance, the initial institutional approval process should be in regulations. So it was really important for us to make sure that the handbook was updated and clear, and really just address some issues that had come up over the years as we looked at the handbook. So this has been a huge lift, and lots of people involved in reviewing this. We've been bringing chapters to you since, like I said, February of 2021. The only chapters you didn't see before was chapter 13, which had to do with the national accreditation, because that chapter was, I will say, a mess, and it really needed some significant cleanup. And then chapter 8, which is the accreditation decisions, which is probably the most important chapter here. We had a nice conversation about that, and it didn't really require too many changes, just some tweaking on that, but you did not see any prior language on that. So we might want to spend a little bit of time on that today, just to make sure. I just wanted to let you know that, so after, in the last few weeks, what we've done is taken all of your comments over the past year and made sure that they were incorporated here and reflected in each of these chapters. I had a wonderful team of consultants review this, lots of people involved, but I just want to at least point out Tim Weeks, Michelle Williams-George, Lynn Larson. You all remember, some of you remember Lynn Larson because she was on the committee and now she's on commission staff. Michelle Bernardo, Gay, of course, Aaron, Poonam, Hart. Everybody has contributed a lot to reviewing these, but we really spent a lot of time looking at this document over and over and over again. And I'm sure there are still things that we need to fix, but it's a lot closer than it was just, 6 months ago. So the other thing I wanted to mention is if we could go through them chapter by chapter. I know that may take a while, but I want to make sure that it reflects what you want it to reflect. And if you have some suggestions, because we want to adopt it today, we want to adopt the entire thing today, I really need exact language from you. So if you have any language change, make sure it's clear to everybody so that when you make a motion that it's incorporating those changes. And want to just say that it was literally impossible to give you a track changes version. It would have been a mess and hard to follow. So we thought the best thing to do was to give you a clean copy, and we will go from there. So that's it for that. And so I don't know if you want to just go chapter by chapter, if that's okay with you. And
That's the way to go.
Okay, sounds good. Yes, please.
So I noticed that we do have track changes for chapter 3.
Okay.
And an agenda insert. Is
Yes.
there something different about that chapter?
That was because that was the chapter that was just adopted by the commission, or wasn't adopted. The policy was just adopted by the commission 2 weeks ago that Hart and Poonam just mentioned. And so they wanted to show you, we wanted to make sure that you saw those changes because they're so recent. Erin, anything else on that you want to mention?
No, not really. Just to clarify that you saw initially changes to chapter 3 last spring. But so there wouldn't have been any track changes if the commission hadn't just adopted staff's recommendations to, for instance, move preconditions and move program specific preconditions to another stage. So like Cheryl said, the insert reflects the changes Hart and Poonam just went over with you. And only in
That's our
part A,
window.
by the way, of that chapter.
Yes, that's right. It's only part A.
Only part A.
Didn't reflect the other parts. Perfect. Yes, so if you want to, we want to start, we start with chapter 1, which tends to be, that was the chapter that probably needed the fewest amount of changes because it's a lot of it's straight from Ed Code. We just cleaned up some of the language here. I don't think we changed anything substantively, but I think some of the language, the other thing that the staff did, I just want to, where there was references to either Ed Code sections, regulations, or the accreditation framework, we double checked all of that just to make sure there were, you know, there's been statute changes and things like that. So we've had to make some of those changes.
Any comments or questions around chapter 1?
All good. So no changes on chapter 1. Okay. Great. All right. Chapter 2 is the standards and accreditation. Any suggestions or changes or? Do our appropriate wait time?
For a whole chapter?
For a whole chapter. All right. Okay, great. Oh, and while I'm thinking of it, because I might forget later, is we would also ask that we that your action allow us to make any, like if something pops out at us later that just grammatically doesn't make any sense, or there's something we missed, a typo, that we can just go ahead and make those non-substantive changes. That would be great.
One thing that's been nice is we've been doing this in chunks, which has been really helpful. So it seems like for me, that makes me more comfortable and kind of moving more quickly now.
Great.
With some of the questions regarding the grammar, is that something you want us to be submitting to you at some point, or is it you figure already gone through that?
You certainly can. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And is there like an editing option at that, or just how would we go about sending that to you?
I think that's a good question. I would probably, I think you have the version in Word here. And if
Right.
there is something, if there's something obvious right now you want to point out, we can certainly fix that. But if it shows up later, we can do that.
I just don't want to wait. I mean, I see a couple things here, maybe streamline some of the sentences here and there, but I just don't want to take the time to do that now.
Yeah, that's fine. You can send it to me. As
Okay.
long as everybody is okay with non-substantive changes, then
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, chapter 3.
All right, and chapter 3 is in 3 sections now. So the first is you want to use the insert that was prepared by Hart and Poonam and Michelle. And it's in 3 different parts. So initial institutional approval, section B is program approval, and section C is status, program change of status. I think there is nothing that I remember that I want to like call to your attention. I think it's pretty straightforward. What do you think? Any thoughts? I can we can wait for a second. Aaron, you're sending me do you want to say something? I'm not sure what the issue was.
I had just noticed that the main link for this item at the top in the agenda, so not the individual chapters, but the discussion and adoption of proposed revised accreditation handbook, does not open the staff summary and introduction of this item, which includes the staff recommendation. It opens chapter 1 again.
Okay.
So I let Michelle know as well. So just when we get to the motion, you won't necessarily have something to read off of because you don't have that staff recommendation in front of you.
Good catch. Interesting. So the recommendation is to adopt the handbook.
We adopt the proposed.
It is. It's to adopt the handbook, but it also has
And
that
allows us-
caveat that that staff is asking that COA include allowing us to make appropriate non-substantive changes should the need arise in the future without always having to bring you back an updated chapter. And again, those would be small things. We realized we said the same word twice, or you know, little things.
Perfect. Thank you, Erin. All right, Cheryl, you found it.
One of the things that I know from being in this group now for a few years is that program approval has always been a little bit where some of our substantive discussions have arisen, including today. And so, you know, in reading that section, it was helpful to me to go back and read it. But I had a couple of questions where I saw if it is decided, for example, and, you know, when you see it as the agent in a sentence, it always makes you wonder, well, who is it?
Who's deciding?
Right. And so I had that question about that section, although now I can't find that. But the other part that I was wondering about is the new subject matter program. So there's a section on subject matter programs, and my understanding always was that those were reviewed by BIR maybe, but we don't get those.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Right. So I think there was just maybe a question in my mind about sort of a flow chart in my own mind.
Okay.
Kind of like a flow chart of who reviews what and who is the it that's deciding on these new programs.
Wonderful. Okay, I think that's helpful. So we will, and I think that it could be a non-substantive change because we could just define whether it's COA or the commission. And the flow chart's a fantastic idea. Okay.
You know, and hoping that with the integrated programs, we may see more of those and fewer subject matter elementary programs, for example, or, you know, with some of the changes of AB 130, I don't know how the subject matter programs are going to be, you know, rolling out. But just to, you know, sort of clarify the relationship of COA to that, to subject matter programs, because we don't have any relationship as far as I know.
Okay.
And then, you know, the fact that the program approval, there's been a BIR. So as the example today, there was a BIR recommendation or a finding in the BIR's report that the standard had been met. And yet in this discussion, there was disagreement with that finding. So the COA is actually the it, right? Not
right.
the BIR.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's the part that wasn't as clear to me as it might be in the document.
Okay. So if we, so what I have for chapter 3 then is to review to make sure that the entity that is taking the action or making that's tied to the verb is defined by, you know, either COA or BIR or whoever has that authority.
Right.
And then to develop a flow chart and to define the relationship to subject matter or review it for subject matter. And that might be something we probably might want to bring back to make a non or more substantive change there. But
I hate to add more work.
It's fine. I mean, as long as you approve what we have here, we can also amend afterwards.
Definitely.
But yes, you're right. When it comes to subject matter, the BIR and the accreditation team team as in our consultants is responsible for the review process of that, but it does not come here. It comes to the commission. Yes. So.
Oh, it just goes past us.
It goes past you. Yes, because it's subject matter rather than preparation programs.
Thanks.
Okay, great.
Moving on to chapter 4.
And chapter 4 was just cleaned up. Michelle Williams George was the guru of finding duplicative sentences or comments. So she was fantastic with, we said that in the chapter or the paragraph right above. So hopefully we've made this more concise and to the point. Page 11, thank you. Number 3, COA. Okay, thank you. Everybody good with accreditation cycle? Great. Chapter 5, the annual accreditation data system. This was one where we made significant changes because when we wrote this originally, we didn't have a data system, so we were projecting. We now have one. And Fifi Lau, our a data system person, and Cheyenne Jones, Cheyenne's behind you, reviewed this and made some suggestions about some of the language. So any changes here? Great. Wonderful. I am much happier with that chapter now. All right, chapter 6 is program review. Erin, do you want to say anything about that? Erin, Erin did this one.
No, just again, I mean, the commission, the committee members have seen it previously. And we just, mostly it had sort of outdated language. Not much has changed about that process. We just call things different things now. So there shouldn't be, you should, if reading it now, it should all look like terminology that you use and a process that you're familiar with. And I think it's nice and clear.
And for our commissioner liaison, program review happens in the 5th year of the cycle in advance of the accreditation site visit. So we actually look at the documentation related to the credential program specifically.
And that was what was mentioned in the last program that came up for review, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was paying attention.
Catching on quick. Member Forbes.
Sorry, this is my day. But, so on page 2,
okay,
faculty/mentor and professional development personnel qualifications. I'm just thinking that across other standards, instead of using the term mentor, it'll say like site-based supervisor, field. And I just was wondering about the consistency of that, because there seems to be a lot of questions sometimes from the field about who is called what.
Right.
So the language in here now is taken almost directly from the program review submission guidelines manuals that are posted on our website. And what we've done in addition for program review and also with our program standards is we've updated our glossaries, and I believe we brought you the glossary updates recently as well, didn't we, Cheryl? Like in June, where we further defined
yes.
Mentor also means site-based supervisor also mean, because we were getting some questions because people use a variety of terminology. I'm not sure we could cover all of it in a glossary, but yeah, so the language in the chapter was taken directly from our program review handbook, just in an attempt to stay very consistent across documents that people may be looking at.
Well, I actually like mentor a lot better. So it would be fun. I would be happy if site-based supervisor like disappeared,
Yeah.
honestly.
Right.
But I'm just making, thinking about it being consistent.
Okay.
And just a comment, going back to what the Art Institute had said earlier, I think if there was that common language in agreement with Cheryl down there, that there would be, I think, maybe less confusion. And a suggestion for the document, if the first time you wrote the word mentor, because I agree with Cheryl as well about that, put an asterisk next to it and ask for reference to an appendix or that glossary, and show across that glossary the synonyms that might be used interchangeably in some other documents produced by the commission, but just consistently say mentor throughout, and just kind of define at the end that mentor could mean, I don't know what the other terms are. I know that when I was doing my student teaching, it was master teacher and student teacher, or, or mentor teacher or whatever. So, yeah.
That sounds like a good idea. Go ahead.
Because there's just so many of those synonyms now that I think mentor really describes the relationship better than any one that may only be locally specific.
All right. I was just looking at the sentence that follows because it expands it there, but okay. All right. Sounds good. Any other suggestions or changes there? Yay. All right. Chapter 7 is one in which the consultants had a lot of changes because they're very familiar with preparing for a site visit. So there was a lot of changes that just brought it, I think just made it tighter and cleaner and brought it up to date, but nothing specifically to call out. They wanted to just make sure that the list includes all of the things that they need to do and very specifically who we talk to in terms of interviews and things like that. But a lot of touching on this by our consultants that work with the institutions to prepare. So the biggest challenge I had was the day 1, day 2 thing, because some of our institutions are shorter site visits, some are longer site visits. So I think it still generally gets the point across, even though it might not follow the day 1, day 2, day 3 thing. Yeah. No additional comments? Yay. All right, chapter 8 is, like I said, I think the most important of this whole thing, and that's the accreditation decision options and implications. And I will tell you there was one substantive change on the chart. Let me try to remember. On the chart on page 2, there was under, I believe, I'm trying to remember, it had to do with the submit periodic follow-up reports. I think it was optional for both with stipulations, with major stipulations, and with probationary. And given what you guys have been doing lately, you always do reports for the probationary. So I made that a check mark, if that's okay with you. Okay. I think that was the only the rest of it, I think generally was still on par with what we're doing. I don't think there was anything big changed there. Some cleanup of the language, but I think that's mostly it. Everybody good?
Yes.
Yay. All right. Okay, we're making it through. Chapter 9 is the 7th year of the accreditation cycle. And that was, I believe, mostly cleanup. And Michelle was in the room a second ago, but mostly cleanup. Any issues there?
Looks like no questions or comments.
Great. Okay, and then chapter 10 is the site visit team member information. That's what we kind of show to the BIR members when they get, so that they have a sense of what the role is. And that, again, none of that information would ever be put in a regulation. That's more guidance for the teams. Sounds like you guys are okay with that. 11 is BIR skills and competencies. Again, that was a lot of cleanup. No big substantive changes. All right.
Any comments, questions?
The team lead responsibilities in chapter 12 was really just a lot of rewriting and cleaning up about what we do here again. A lot of cleanup on these things.
Again, compliments to the team for the detail.
Wonderful.
It looks good.
Great. And chapter 13, we had to pretty much rewrite it because we now have 2 accrediting bodies that operate with us differently. So we tried to write it so that it was clear enough to apply to any national accrediting body. But I think we were trying to make it more user-friendly. The second part that had to do with accreditation of programs, so national accreditation of programs. So those would be, like the National Association of School Psychologists, NASPA, that we deal with and things like that. Tried to make that really clear because that language was really unclear in the versions that we had before. So we tried to really clean that up.
Any comments or questions on this chapter?
And it was interesting because the way that you did, even though this body has the authority in Ed Code to do, or authority and responsibility to do the comparability of standards to determine, okay, those align here, but they don't align here. But the way it was communicated was just really wonky, and it acted like the institution, the way it was written was that the institution kind of made the decision rather than this body, and this body is the one who decides the comparability. So had to kind of reword that a little bit.
Final chapter 14.
14, evaluation system, and it's short and sweet in general. And this, every time I read this, reminds me that I need to bring you the results of the last year's surveys from our team members, which I haven't done yet. So we'll do that in January.
That would be interesting. Any questions, comments for this final chapter? How about any questions about the whole process or the handbook in general?
No, it's just we have it on the website by chapter so that somebody can just not pull up the entire thing. But yeah, it's all virtual or online. Yes, we could do that.
We can't hear the speaker online.
Oh,
I just made a comment to Jerry offering that we can make him a hard copy if you'd like to have one. That was all.
could you hear Jerry's comment? I'm sorry.
I accept it.
It was asked whether we have hard copies or if it's only online.
Got
And
it.
It's only online. Thank you. Yes, and he would like a copy, so we can get him a copy.
But it is a great, reference. I know I've learned a lot as we prepare for site visit, etc. Any final comments? So this is an action item, and I know all of you have your proposal ready in your head or a motion. Do I have a motion by a committee member?
The new cover sheet is posted now. So if you click refresh on your web page for the agenda and then click that link, it's there if you want to, because it has the staff recommendation and if somebody would like that. And yes, Michelle is very fast.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Okay, now do I have a motion? Co-Chair Frawley.
I move that we accept, or rather, accept or adopt, not sure.
Adopt.
Adopt the proposed revised accreditation handbook as presented to us and as discussed.
The last part about substance. Remember we talked about making those appropriate non-substance.
Got it. With the understanding that appropriate non-substantive changes may be made in the coming weeks and months.
Great.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, Member Kresha. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, motion carries.
Congrats on all the hard work on that from the staff. I mean, it did just an amazing amount of time and effort, and also the committee members who have been taking the time to go ahead and read through all this. Not easy. It's tedious. And I know you're glad it's all done, sure.
I am very glad it's done. I actually took this with me and read it for like the 100th time on a drive from Sacramento to Boise. It was very exciting.
Wow.
What's that? No, my husband was driving. I was reading it. I wish I had it on Audible. That would have made it easier. Yes.
So, but
I know. I had no choice. I was up against the timeline.
I think it's also just a good time to recognize that you did this in simultaneously while doing so many other changes and adaptations to our system through these last couple of years.
Yeah.
Really kudos to the whole team. We haven't said that loud enough.
Great. Thank you so much. I am happy that it's finally done. So
Cheryl, will you be doing us a books on tape version for?
I'll be signing Jerry's version. Exactly. Wonderful. Yeah. The boy.
Okay, moving on to item 22, the discussion of council for accreditation of educator preparation or CAEP agreement. Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce this item.
Yes, and Michelle, I don't know if Matt Vanover and Melina Monaco they were going to join, but Matt's great. That's wonderful. And my apologies to Matt. I had told him that I would tell him this morning about what time that we would have this item, and he's back east, so I don't know what time it is there, but thank you for joining us, Matt, Matt's from CAEP. So every 7 years, is that correct, Matt? We have to update our agreement with CAEP, and so this is the time we have to do that. Our current agreement expires on October 31st, so we needed to have a new one up by November 1st. And many thanks to Matt for helping me put this or helping he actually put it into the CAEP format. That is their format for these agreements. But just it's real important for us as an agency to have these relationships with the national accrediting bodies for those institutions who want to go through and pursue national accrediting. So my thanks to CAEP, and looking forward to another successful partnership. And either one of us can answer whatever questions. Mary, Vixie, Sandy will sign this on behalf of the commission. And I think we put it on as an action item. It's more that you are in the loop and are, you're not necessarily approving it, but you are endorsing it, I guess would be a good way to say it. Matt, would you like to say anything?
I just want to thank you for the partnership that we've enjoyed with CCTC for the past number of years as CAEP has come into existence in 2013 and has evolved through that process. It has been a great process and partnership. Enjoy having the California teams part of our visit. Gives a lot of context to what is going on and being able to have that local flavor as well. As we look at the national accreditation standards, and Cheryl and Aaron have been wonderful to work with as we've put together this agreement, and then also with scheduling of the visits. So really appreciate it and happy to answer any questions. And if I don't have the answers, I'm happy to get back to y'all.
Right.
How about any questions from the committee? Comments? Do you want to add anything?
Well, what I was just going to say is we could really use some additional California trained CAEP reviewers. That would be very helpful to our process. We'd like to have California folks on the visits. There's a lot of translating of California language and acronyms and that kind of thing. And CAEP has always been very gracious to allow us to have 5 people, and of course anybody else who applies on their own, but every summer, and we have never been able to make that number. So we really would like spread the word. We would like to have more folks who are available and trained to do these joint visits.
And Cheryl, if you're able to get more than 5, we will be able to accommodate more than 5.
Wonderful.
Can you talk a little bit about that process?
I think Matt might be able to talk about that better than me. Are you still doing it in the summers?
So our training now is virtual. It is still, for the most part, in the summer. It requires that there be it is asynchronous and synchronous training. It requires that they do some training ahead of time, and then they will have a couple of days where they will come together and actually write a report as a team. It's done virtually, so that helps as far as people being able to accommodate their schedule. And then there is a post assessment afterwards to make sure that they've understood the content. And it also includes it also includes inherent bias training in there, so that we're able to ensure that our visitors or reviewers are able to look at this in a diverse and equitable manner as well.
Thank you. Member Forbes, I think you had a question.
Well, I thank you. This is all very interesting to me, not being a CAEP member institution. And I maybe missed it somewhere, but how many CAEP institutions do we have in California right now? 3?
3.
there's 3 that have gone through fully through the new CAEP. I call it new process because but it's not really new anymore. But there are several more that are, I think, in the wings or have had NCAEP and haven't had the complete. Do you know the number off the top of your head, Matt?
There are currently 3 that have been accredited under the CAEP standards, and there are another 5 that were accredited under the NCAEP standards that will be going through CAEP standards in the near future.
Yes.
And I had one more question.
Go
So
ahead,
I
ma'am.
guess I'm just curious, given that the modality of site visits, changed during the pandemic, and I know from the next agenda item in our report that we're considering options for the future, this group, right? So would CAEP conduct virtual site visits if the visit remains virtual in California? How would that work for an institution? Would they be having a CAEP team in person and a CTC team remote, or would it be the same? What are your thoughts about that?
So in March of 20, as everybody else experienced the pandemic, we switched to a fully remote review system. We have had some very positive feedback on that. And from EPPs, they enjoy that. It's about a 20% reduction in their site review cost because they don't have to pay for people to travel to go there. We also find that it's very efficient as people are doing that. It is our intent to remain on that remote site visit planning into the future, unless we get other direction from the U.S. Department of Education that we would have to go back to an in-person review.
Thank you.
And Member Kresha, did you have a question?
Can you use the mic? Thank you.
I was just going to, comment, being a CAEP institution, having recently done the joint visit, our CAEP visit, it was well done, I thought, in terms of the coordination between CTC and CAEP. I still had questions, but, for a different time in terms of the alignment of the standards and how to work that out, because there are some definite differences that kind of, gave us a little bit of drama, but,
Yeah.
but, accreditation is drama anyway. But yeah, so I would just like to say that the coordination and CTC did, or the CAEP group, when CTC went virtual, CAEP also went virtual to make it helpful and easy for us so that we could, coordinate well. So I, kudos to CAEP for that. And, we had received our decision and it was, similar. The things that were highlighted by both institutions, CTC and CAEP, were very, very similar. So that was helpful.
That's good. That's
in
good.
terms of, in stipulations and areas for improvement. So I think that, shows some alignment and shows, that at least we're looking at the same things, even though they are looked at a little differently.
Right.
And the evidence and the burden of proof, as it were, is a little bit different.
That's right.
Other comments, questions for this item? Okay, Matt, we'd like to thank you for joining us. And just a reminder, this is really for our endorsement. I just want to clarify, are there any concerns about moving forward? Okay.
Great.
All right, then we will move on to item number 23.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Item 23 is the COA annual report for 2021-22. This item says information action, but staff needs action on this item. And Administrator Cheryl Hickey will once again introduce this item.
Yes, thank you. And yes, it is for action. This is the item that comes to you every year in October, and the 2 co-chairs present this report to the commission at the December meeting. I think this year we will enhance it with a PowerPoint. I think it'll be easier to do it that way. But there are 3 sections to it. Those of you who've been on the committee for a while, it looks familiar. But there are 3 parts to it. The first part is sort of more general things that accreditation's involved in this year. Everything from technical assistance to the actual summary of things. Section 2 is the accreditation decisions. It's the section that you are most familiar with in terms of the decisions because you make them. Program approvals, withdrawals, all of that. It's sort of the quantitative piece of it. And section 3 is the looking forward to this current year and what our priorities are for the work plan, in addition to our normal routine accreditation work. So the item is before you, and you've read it, so I don't want to read it to you. But happy to take any changes. I know Bob has some changes to the letter that's on the first page that I did not get in time, or I missed the email or something, but he has some edits to the letter. And I'm happy to incorporate those before they go to the commission. But happy to take any and all suggestions at this time.
Member Forbes.
I have a question. So I have a question about one of the charts.
Okay.
First of all, it was fascinating to read, actually. And it always gives me some kind of feelings to know how much we've all accomplished. It really is a little bit overwhelming when you look at it. So now I've got to scroll to the chart, but it was about all of the programs that there was one chart or table that displayed programs who'd met all of the standards when they were reviewed.
Okay.
And then under that, gosh, what page was it on?
So page 28, is that the chart you're thinking? Institutions receiving accreditation with all common and all program standards met?
Right, because
Okay.
I know one of the interests, the first thing I just was going to say about that is I know that there was an interest when I substituted for the chair 1 year in presenting this. The chair of the CTC at that time, Linda Darling Hammond, was quite interested in whether or not we were going to give out some kind of commendation for exemplary institutions. And so I just wondered if that was a little bit behind what was in that chart. But then on the and I thought it was interesting about the analysis of the common standards and the program standards. So when it comes to the program standards, I saw that there was the CTEL program, and it said there was one program offer that was reviewed that year, had an accreditation site visit that year offering the program. I think that was UCSD.
Okay.
And we did meet all the program standards. So it says 0.
Okay, that could be an error then. We will double check that.
So I noticed that one.
Thank you.
But have we had those every year and somehow I just missed that?
Yes, we have. The all standards. Yes, that was one way that we thought we might be able to at least highlight the institutions that have done exceptionally well in accreditation.
I guess I've did the analysis of all the common standards.
Yes, we have done that too. Yep. That's okay. There's a lot of data in here. And, I do have, I missed acknowledging Tim Weeks and Michelle Bernardo, who we start with section 2 because that's all of your decision making. And they are really responsible for putting all of the work in section 2 and did a lot of the updating of the report this year. So thank you to both of them.
So hopefully we'll be able to continue to use that, those analyses, because it was pretty interesting looking at it. And then just the last thing, and this is only editorial, was I noticed for section 3, it looked like it said work plan for 21-22 when it was actually for 22-23.
You are
It
right.
was just a header.
You are.
I've been grading too many papers.
You got the eagle eye today.
Really good at it.
Yes, eagle eye. Thank you very much. Good catch.
How about any other suggestions, changes, comments? Okay, so just remember this is an action item. Do I have a motion by a committee member to approve the COA annual report for 2021-2022? Member Morrison?
I move that we accept and approve the reports for the COA 21-22.
And seconds? Member Hillis? And all those in favor? And opposed? Okay, motion carries. And again, thank you to the whole team for all of this work. Really want to give you a lot of credit for that.
Yes, and Aaron too.
Yes.
Do not mean to.
You're part of
put you
the
off
team,
with
Aaron.
Tim and-
So.
She's very important to this part.
Okay, so this time we'll move to the public comment section of our meeting. Does any member of the public have anything it wishes to say? Please raise your hand in the Zoom feature, or we'll wait a moment to see if we have anyone indicating they wish to speak in the chat function. Okay, so having no further business, I adjourn the October 2022 meeting with the Committee on Accreditation. The next meeting of the committee will be January 26th and 27th of 2023.